trying to think back to how long our club has been involved in assisting victims of sex trafficking. And I recall I was president in 2010. Mark Chapin followed me. And as I recall, the club foundation authorized maybe $1,000 to help sponsor a symposium of police, sheriffs, and other law enforcement people at the Hilton Hotel. And Mark and I delivered that little check to the speakers there that day. So that's at least 12 years, and I like to think a lot of progress has been made. There's certainly a lot more that can be made. So our speaker today is Sgt Molly McCade of the Multnomah County Sheriff's Office. She's the sheriff with responsibility for prosecuting sex offenders. She works with prosecutors and others to gather evidence to prosecute and convict sex offenders. She also works with victims to get them assistance. So with that, please welcome Sgt McCade. Thanks for coming.
Thank you. And thanks for the introduction. I'm Molly. I'm a 5th generation Oregonian with roots back to before it was a state. So probably 4th generation Portlander. And, you know, my job, I've been here at the Sheriff's Office for almost 27 years. I come up on my anniversary on the 10th of this month. And I have to say, I wish that I never had to do this job, because it just goes to show what our level of exploitation that's going on within our city for individuals who are vulnerable. If at any point, let's see if we can get to the, there we go, move forward. So is there a reason why it's got that little?
Just push it, the button. Got it.
Got it.
All right. So my job is I'm a corrections sergeant, and back in 2008, I was running our classification unit, and I do a lot of intel work, so I can't really talk about that. But I listened to jail phone calls and came across some phone calls in regards to individuals in our community who were in custody setting, continuing to promote individuals in the community to sell sex, and some of those were minors. And just to be really clear with trafficking, any minor, so individual under 18 in the United States, cannot exchange sex for an item of value. So that means drugs, money, a place to stay, food, you know, any of those basic needs. That can, if there is an exchange of sex, that individual that is exchanging sex with that minor could be prosecuted under our trafficking laws federally. So as an adult, we have a burden of proof of force, fraud, or coercion with a third-party exploiter. So there is a difference between sex work, if someone was actually working under their own volition with no one else in control, and trafficking. So that's what we focus on here at the Sheriff's Office. And my job in particular, I focus on individuals in our custody setting to assist in either building cases or in supporting cases within our community that are already indicted. Another kind of sidebar to what I do is, I'm trying to forward the slide so it's not.
It would happen as soon as I walk.
Yeah.
I told you. Probably the very first slide.
You did.
Try it now.
Let's try. There we go. And I think I just explained what that is, and that slide is very wordy. But I wanted to be very clear, because we don't need that third-party exploiter with a minor. And what we're seeing in our community right now here in Portland with our houseless population is a lot of young people that are running away very frequently. And this is not just here in Portland, this is in Beaverton, in Clackamas, it's in our suburbs also, and all over the state where individuals are running away and they're going to our houseless camps and they're being exploited. So we just recovered a young woman the other day, and I know that I just saw a bulletin of a young person out in Washington County that is missing. So the trafficking does intersect with our jail system because we're not in a silo. When individuals are out to make money, and they do that through exploitation, it's not just drugs and girls, it's also gun violence. So we see a lot of those cases intersect. I sit on our weekly shooting review committee here in Portland because there's very often that those same individuals that are creating gun violence in our communities are also involved in other forms of criminal behavior. So we are very unique here in Multnomah County with having this position. I travel all over the United States to teach law enforcement and also prosecutors to how to implement this, to actually leverage your ready information, your information in the jail setting to prosecute individuals. We've prosecuted over 300 cases federally and locally since I think it was since 2009. So this position's been around since 2009. And one thing that I do kind of on a sidebar, mainly because I realized early on, I can't do all of this work by myself because I'm kind of a one-person show at the sheriff's office, but I collaborate with Portland Police and the FBI task force and a lot of people, our DA's office. But I started to leverage it, intern power. And actually one of the people that's on the Zoom that's part of your organization was one of my interns as an undergrad and as a grad student. And we've done now in collaboration with mainly Portland State, but also Arizona State and Colorado Springs, or University of Colorado, and then a school in North Dakota, research. So, you know, when we're seeing these things anecdotally, you know, and going like, we've got a high houseless population here in Portland, and we're seeing these young people that are running away and being exploited out of our house, you know, our camps that are around the city. You know, we can't just say anecdotally, you know, we want to actually look at the data that supports that and either prove it or discount it. So that's a lot of these studies that we've been doing came from identifying some of these trends that we're going to talk about. So one of the things that I do in the jail is I talk to traffickers and I talk to victims, and I've never had anyone that doesn't want to talk. Like they really want to share information. I don't talk about their cases, but I talk about like, how do you make money? You know, where are you traveling? This is not just one of those kind of crimes where people mainly stay in one spot. They move all around the US. And I think one of the big crevices here nationally is that we aren't able to collaborate seamlessly. There aren't systems set up. It's built on relationships, and, you know, eventually I'm going to retire. I keep trying to tell people within our county, we need to set up processes here, because if we don't have this process set up, these kiddos are going to fall through the cracks. And as a community, we're going to take care of them, because individuals, and I talked to many lived experience experts that have been through this. My best friend's a lived experience expert. She, you know, we talk on a daily basis, but she also supports individuals who are currently being exploited. And there are long-term harms, not just physical harms, but mental health harms. And, you know, I am kind of skeptical whether they will ever be able to stop working on their mental health care throughout their entire life, because there are so many things that could be triggering. They could walk into a room here and smell someone's cologne and be triggered. The fact that this was an exploiter with them when they were 14 years old that wore that same cologne. So there's things that just kind of come up in their life unexpectedly if they aren't dealing with this. So when I talk to victims in the jail system, I try to connect them with those lived experience experts. I try to connect them with services, not just in the jail. You know, they may be having, you know, terrible nightmares that then they can't sleep anymore. You know, connecting them with our mental health team, or, you know, our medical team, but also connecting them when they're bridging back into the community for someone that can be supportive and maybe assist with basic needs. Maybe they don't have a place to stay anymore, or, you know, because they're exiting the life, they're exiting that unhealthy relationship with someone who's been exploiting them. So, you know, this is a captive audience. These individuals are not being brought into jail for prostitution. And I want to be really clear about that. But I am seeing a huge trend in drunk driving, you know, and, you know, domestic violence. So when they're trying to exit that negative situation that they're in, oftentimes they could be arrested for actually, you know, committing domestic violence, or maybe it's a self-defense. You know, the officer that's arresting is not necessarily seeing the full picture. So within our jail systems across the US, not just here in Portland, Oregon, there's been an increase in women who are incarcerated. You know, and how that really is like the total number isn't any different. But in about 2007, our county made a choice to start supervising people in the community more than incarcerating them. So our jail beds started to drop. But really, the only people that were affected positively with getting out of jail were many men. So our female population went from about 11-12% to 22 to 25%. So almost a quarter of them. And we didn't really necessarily follow that with services for women that were specific. What you're looking at here is a relational analysis. This is one person in the light green center, and all of their connections with other traffickers, other victims, and then individuals like family members within their community system. And this is out actually 2 circles out. And this is why our collaboration is so critical with these cases, is you don't really understand how there are networks and communities of people. And even one of the studies that we're looking at in the future, generational trafficking, family systems that are entrenched in this cycle. Can somebody make sure that I stay on my time, because I can get talking on this and I'll talk forever. So some of the studies that we've done here locally are the very first study that we embarked on was human trafficking tattoos. There was no research in the United States, probably in the world, regarding human trafficking specific tattoos. And we have I don't know, about 1,500 identified traffickers in our county, about 2,500 identified victims, both minor and adults in our county, and another 1,200 identified sex buyers that were cited within our county, and another 130 or so for luring and purchasing of minors. The second study that we did was a trajectory of a human trafficking investigation, talking about that case collaboration and best practices on how to work with each other so that we can actually prosecute individuals effectively and move them out of the community away from harm. So what this was a 9-defendant case that involved two pharmacy armed robberies. It involved 4 dispensaries, so marijuana dispensary armed robberies. It involved 3 separate individuals who were indicted and prosecuted for trafficking 6 different women. One of those was a young girl that just graduated from 8th grade who was exploited on our track. So 82nd and Sandy Boulevard area. I think a lot of you probably have history here in Portland. You know, we at one time, MLK, Interstate, Columbia was our track, right? It's not anymore. It's pushed out, you know, further East County. So This nine person, I hear it. That's the warning. This nine defendant case was a collaboration that the first piece of jail intel to actually, or the first piece of intelligence to actually open the case for trafficking was from the jail. It was a note that was left by a young woman who was telling her trafficker that I'm holding it down for you. I've got 2 other girls, they're still working. I've got your money still, it's safe. I know you're going to be out of jail in 2 days, because he was just there for a 2-day, he had violated his PO, the orders for his supervision. And that was what opened it up to start to look at these interconnections. So in addition to that, we had like a gang shooting where, you could ID this individual because he was shot in the foot. So when he was robbing the dispensaries, he was wearing a boot, and, there's just all sorts of very interesting things the second study that we did. So these are all scientific studies where we're actually looking at the data points and trying to create best practices and share that. I'm actually going to do that presentation up in Spokane in a couple weeks. So I'm interested to see what they think about that. The third study that we did was done by Jackie, who is part of your organization. And she studied our sex buyers and our luring and purchasing of minors. And I think one of the biggest things that popped out from that study for me was that for the 129 people that had lured and purchased a minor, or attempted to, that 49% of those individuals were registered sex offenders before they attempted to purchase that minor. Okay, so that was really interesting for me to pull out. I would never have seen that had we not done that level of data analysis. The fourth study that we did was on sex traffickers. So that one was very interesting. In both the buyer and the sex buyer and the trafficker studies, we looked at individuals and their criminal histories. So we looked at the date of the offense that we knew of, or when we identified that person as a trafficker, and their criminal history prior to that and their criminal history after. And for the highlight for me, because we're going to go and do a little bit more data crunching on this, but one of the highlights was that the age of first criminal justice experience was as a minor. It's like 16 or 17 for all of those individuals. And so we've separated that out by the 300 convicted traffickers. Currently, we had I think 50 or so that were indicted, that are currently indicted in our custody, and also for other offenses. And then the group of suspected traffickers, we did 10% of them. So this is a rather large sample set to do. So some of the things that we're seeing, I talked about that generational trafficking, it's huge. I started seeing that years ago when I started to actually collect this data. And so, I mean, even just yesterday, I realized in digging into someone's information that their mother had been in the life before, okay? There are individuals I've talked to that are 3rd generation victims of sex trafficking. One that stands out to me is she tells me my grandmother was from Korea, and she was trafficked in Vietnam. She was taken to Vietnam to service our servicemen, right? She married one of those servicemen that was from Portland and came back here. Her daughter that they had ended up being involved in the outlaw motorcycle gang groups. So I don't really want to say which one, but she was exploited out of the biker clubs. She was exploited out of our strip clubs. And then, lo and behold, 3rd generation at 13, she gets, the young girl that I'm talking about got kicked out of the house, and within 72 hours, actually, she said it was probably about 2 days, she was picked up by her first pimp, who kept her until he got prosecuted when she was about 18. So about 5 years that she worked with him. And many of these young people move, I like my analogy I like to use is they jump from the boiling hot pan of water to the black skillet full of crackling grease, because they are looking for something better. They're looking for a better life than where they're at. So many of them have so many vulnerabilities. And those are, you know, even though a victim of trafficking can be from any walk of life, I could be one. You know, there are people within our communities that are so predatory that they would love to, and I'm going to use a term that they would use, knock me. Okay, so they would love to knock someone. That means get them on the roll, get them working, start to use their money. They'd really love to, prey on a square person. That's someone that holds down a job that has credit, you know, that they can use and manipulate. So we have used, fentanyl. This actually, I originally created this presentation for our county commissioners, I believe in 2018. And we were already seeing fentanyl and cocaine, the rise of that. Now I can emphatically tell you that there are almost every young person that's coming, you know, that Portland Police is interviewing or child welfare is interviewing, that fentanyl is involved in their part of their exploitation. It's so very addicting, and especially the fake blues, they call them, that they're making, and they're everywhere. So I hear from the girls in the community that sale of sex and actual sex acts out of our strip clubs in the back rooms. It happens. So, you know, Portland's very liberal. We have, I think at last count, over 80 strip clubs in the metro area. You know, that's not just Portland. And I don't know, there might be someone in this room that actually owns a strip club. Who knows? But, you know, as individuals, there are people that are being exploited out of our strip clubs. This is where they make dates. When Backpage shut down, they were doing it the old fashioned way, and they were connecting there in those strip clubs or places of adult entertainment, right? The morbidity rate, and this is another study that we're actually starting to crunch numbers on right now, is very high, not just for our victims of trafficking, not just for our traffickers who are very involved in gun violence, but also for our sex buyers. We've had 3 cases that I know of just in the last 2 years in Multnomah County where our sex buyers have been killed by victims. We've had 2 cases in Washington County that I know of, and 3 cases in Clackamas County that I know of. So a lot of times they're regular customers, and you know, the girls are, if they're under the influence, they're not making wise choices. And if they're under force, fraud, or coercion of a trafficker, they're being told that they need to do certain things, and ripping a John off is one thing that happens very regularly, and it's so very underreported because obviously it's against the law, so they don't want to report that. Plus they probably don't want their wife to know, or significant other, because a lot of times that's the dynamic of who's buying sex. So I'd like to open it up to, you know, any questions that we have, because I don't remember. So this is the tattoo that started my tattoo research, and we used over almost 3,000 images. What you're seeing here is a female torso bent backwards. She's held by the neck with one hand, held by the ankles in the other. She's got exaggerated breasts and exaggerated fanny. Her arms are flailing back. It's obviously titled "Break a Bitch," and she has money shooting out of her vagina. So no, this is not a gang tattoo. This is not art. This is a human trafficking tattoo. So this is research that we've done here in collaboration with Portland State. So sorry if I'm being a little, this is my work. You know, I'm gonna tell you how I know. Now on the other side of his pec, which I don't have the picture in this presentation, is a money bag. It's a bag of money, and it says "Shrillionaire." So if you break a bitch, you will become a trillionaire. This is all about money. It's not about the harm of people. It's about making money. And so a lot of individuals that are involved in this life, there's some reason that they're trying to make that money. A young man I deal with pretty regularly, I know only has an 8th grade education. He's very bright. He's very charismatic. This is the only way he knows to make money. He's also so criminal justice involved at this point in his career. It may be that there are a lot of doors that are shut for him, and the motivation to actually go work a 9-to-5 job is probably not really there, right? So, but if you guys have any questions, this is something that's kind of a pet peeve of mine, because I look at our local government and how we set up funding for things. It's very siloed. And our victims of trafficking, they have poly-victimization in multiple areas. So they may be a trafficking survivor and a victim of sex trafficking, but they may also have gang impacted families, or they may also be a domestic violence survivor. But all of our pots of money are in these separate areas, and it's really difficult to communicate across those areas. And they may only have one area where they can get emergency housing through, and that's domestic violence. But really what we need to look at is start focusing on those individuals themselves and at their actual needs, right? And looking at their trauma involved. So just by the way we have our systems set up and our non-government organizations, it makes it very hard for people to access services. So that's one of my pet peeves. Yes, sir.
How do we break the cycle?
You know, it's different for each person. That's what I would say. It's going to be different for each person. I believe that we see the most success when we leverage lived experience survivors and match that individual up with a mentor, you know. And it's not that they are going to exit this life right away. Some of them might be like, I want to get the heck out of this. This is, you know, like, give me a place to stay, get me out of the city, get me wherever where I can be away from this person. It might take many times to exit. We know that the average time to exit for domestic violence could be 7 times that the person is actually exiting that relationship. I would say it's much higher for sex trafficking, because you usually do have that intimate partner relationship with that element of exploiting them for their sex and selling their sex to others. So it's just very confusing to that individual. And then if you think about a lot of traffickers kind of boyfriend, so, and what that means is they present themselves as a boyfriend. So to that victim, they're a dolphin, they're not a shark. They really are a shark though, because it's not a healthy relationship where they're, you know, where they're, I'm not even going to define what a healthy relationship is at this point, but like, it's just not a healthy relationship. And, you know, that young person or that adult, we've had cases with 40-year-old women who have had good jobs that all of a sudden get stuck into this. And part of it is, you know, self-esteem, that wanting to belong, that, you know, maybe looking at that Maslow's hierarchy of care and needs and having those basic needs met, but that also includes that emotional attachment to someone. And, you know, I love technology, you know, Bob's over here helping with my technology, but like, I think that removal of people and knowing people is really hard for our younger people. You know, they're so stuck on technology. So yeah, I had an interesting conversation yesterday with a young man at Portland State about this. We were talking about just life and technology and personal contact, you know, and good friends. Like, we were actually looking at some literature from like the 1860s and how women had, and these are like, you know, historic, I'm a history major, so I love history, but these are like documents where you can actually see that women had stronger relationships with each other in those days. Part of it as a result, maybe because they didn't have a lot of opportunities unsupervised, you know, with men to have like a friendship with a man, because there was always that question, you know, like of her, I don't know the word I wanted to use. Yes, there we go. Thank you. Anyway, do we have any questions? It is really hot up here. Yes.
So I had been hearing from, and I was curious, you said you had just, that you had someone in their 40s that, or you had heard of some people. I have had conversations with friends where they feel like they were being targeted at like a gas station or whatever, single woman, you know, mid 40s going in to get gas and would be approached by a man and then a woman. I mean, is this on the rise for, is it all ages? Is it just?
I think that there is such a low risk, or I mean, such a low risk for predatory people to be held accountable. And the profits are so high that they are willing to take those chances.
Do they just grab the person, take them, and they're
No,
like,
you know, the whole kidnapping thing is like a huge, I rarely hear about like kidnapping,
Okay.
you know, like that's, you know,
It's
that's
not
the movie
coercion.
Taken. Yeah, it's more, you know, creating some form of a trust bond, a friendship, whatever, you know, maybe moving to that next level of an intimate partner relationship. And then slowly, you know, or it can sometimes be quick too. Like I've never heard the same story twice, right? You know, I think that young people are maybe a little bit more impressionable and easily manipulated. I've seen stuff on dating apps. I'm not on any dating apps for a reason, you know, like it's maybe my trust level is low, but like I'm not gonna go there, because like I feel like that puts us also in a place where we're putting a lot of our personal business in the open, that if someone has bad intentions, and we don't really know that until it's too late, you know. I think that there was an individual that was communicating to someone that she never actually saw, and you know, you'll hear the, oh, she sent $40,000. Why? This happens, you know, this really does happen. So there's some, you know, trust relationship. Not to say that that's trafficking, but it's still that person that has bad intentions and are very predatory.
Other questions for Molly?
Yes.
With the police services being so decimated, has your department seen, have you lost a lot of both officers and funding?
Yes. Yes. I work in the Justice Center. As I drove out yesterday, I looked out to the right on our building, in the secure area of our building. It said, fuck 12 with a big anarchist sign that was brand new graffiti. It's a daily threat. Are we recorded right now? I change my habits on a daily basis. My dad was a law enforcement professional. He did 36 years between the county and Portland. My oldest son is a sergeant with me at the sheriff's office. My great grandfather was in law enforcement. No different than, you know, people following their father in the footsteps of owning a business or being a doctor. You know, I find that this is, you know, a good profession, and it's very difficult to recruit and retain good people who are willing to put up with this level of actual abuse, in my opinion. That's one reason why I leverage my jail interns. I've had over 130 interns since 2015, mostly from Portland State. Most of them are criminal justice majors, and we've retained quite a few. I think I've got 8 that are Portland cops. I've got 2 law enforcement deputies now. I've got a couple corrections deputies, advocates, some that are going to law school. Like, to me, that's where we have to be successful at showing them that they can be successful in their career with all this hostility. Yeah.
Brian, do you have a question?
I
Last
was going
question.
to ask about, I didn't see you mention anything about social media sites where I've read about some predators communicating with one
Yeah.
another, and
It's in 100% of the cases.
yeah, I mean.
100.
Yeah.
I'll be emphatic about that. It's the use of the internet is in not just the grooming and maintaining of individuals in this life, but also in recruiting buyers and, marketing themselves. It's everywhere.
Can you shut those things down, or is it beyond your?
I can't personally, but we do leverage that information, by subpoena and get that and use that for our cases. So that's why I say it's unless they are spending 5 days on the track but still even those, the meeting of that trafficker in this case with the 8th grader was done off of Instagram. So yeah, it happens in every case. I believe that there are some federal regulations and laws that they're looking at right now that they have been for a number of years. None of this moves fast. It doesn't move fast. There have been a number of, laws that have come out, and like Backpage got shut down because at that point, that was probably the #1 place where women were advertising and traffickers were advertising people to buy and sell sex. And when they made that law change that said the owners that are profiting from this could go to jail if you don't remove minors out of your ads, and really respond to those complaints. And that's how they ended up shutting down Backpage. But that was like multiple states like Arizona and Texas and a bunch of other attorney generals that got together, and that's how that got shut down. Those are huge cases at more the federal level than local.
Thank you, Molly.
You're welcome.
Very good.